The Bean Trees, Chapter 9, Ismene. Esperanza tried to kill herself. Esteban came to the back door and told me in a quiet voice that she had taken a bottle of baby aspirin. I couldn't really understand why he had come. Shouldn't you be with her? I asked. He said she was with Maddie. Maddie had found her almost immediately and rushed her to a clinic she knew of in South Tucson where you didn't have to show papers. I hadn't even thought of this, all the extra complications that must have filled their lives even in times of urgency. Maddie once told me about a migrant lemon picker in Phoenix who lost a thumb in a machine and bled to death because the nearest hospital turned him away. Is she going to be all right? How could he know? But he said yes, that she was. They might or might not have to vacuum her stomach, he explained. He seemed to know the whole story, including the ending, and I began to suspect it was something that had happened before. It was after sunset and the moon was already up. A fig grew by the back door, an old, stubborn tree that was slow to leaf out. The moon threw shadows of fig branches that curled like empty hands across Esteban's face and his chest. Something inside this man was turning inside out. He followed me into the kitchen where I had been cutting up carrots and cubes of cheese for Turtle's lunch tomorrow. To keep my hands from shaking, I pushed the knife carefully through stiff orange carrot flesh against the cutting board. I don't really know what to say when something like this happens, I told him. Anything I can think of to talk about seems ridiculous next to a person's life or death. He nodded. Can I get you something? Did you eat? I opened the refrigerator door, but he waved it shut. At least a beer then, I said. I opened 2 beers and set one on the table in front of him. From my earliest memory, times of crisis seemed to end up with women in the kitchen preparing food for men. I can see right now that I'm going to do one of 2 things here, I told Esteban. Either shove food at you or run off at the mouth. When I get nervous, I fall back on good, solid female traditions. It's okay, he said. I'm not hungry, so talk. I had never heard him say it's okay before. Restaurant work was corrupting Esteban's perfect English. I took his statement to mean that it was okay to talk about things that weren't especially important, so I did. Luann took the baby over to her mother-in-law's for some kind of weekend-long reunion, I said, swallowing too much beer. They still consider her part of the family, but of course she won't go over when Angel's there, so they have to work it all out. But now, of course, it's easier since Angel's left town. It's totally nuts. See, they're Catholic. They don't recognize divorce. I felt my face go red. I guess you're Catholic too. But he wasn't offended. More or less, he said, Catholic by birth. Did you have any idea she was going to do this? No, I don't know. There's not a thing you could have done anyway, really. I swept the carrot pieces into a plastic bag and put it in the refrigerator. I knew this kid in high school, Scotty Ritchie. Everybody said Scotty was a genius, mainly because he was real quiet and wore those thick glasses and understood trigonometry. He killed himself on his 16th birthday, just when everybody else was thinking, well, now Scotty'll learn to drive and maybe get a car and go out on dates. You know? And that his complexion was bound to clear up and so forth. Bang. They find him dead in a barn with all these electrical wires strung around his neck. In the paper, they said it was an accident. But nobody actually believed that. Scotty had done probably 500 different projects with electricity for 4-H. 4-H? It's a club for farm kids where you raise lambs or make an apron or wire a den lamp out of a bowling pin, things like that. I never was in it. You had to pay. Oh, I see. Do you want to sit in the living room? I asked him. He followed me into the other room and I scooted snow boots off the sofa. When Esteban sat down next to me, my heart was bumping so hard I wondered if I was going to have a heart attack. Just what Esteban needed would be another woman falling apart on him. So nobody could understand about Scotty, I said, but the way I see it is, he just didn't have anybody. In our school, there were different groups you would run with, depending on your station in life. There were the town kids whose daddies owned the hardware store, what have you. They were your cheerleaders and your football players. Then there were hoodlums, the motorcycle types that cut down trees on Halloween. And then there were the rest of us, the poor kids and the farm kids. Greasers, we were called, or nutters. The main rule was that there was absolutely no mixing. Do you understand what I mean? Yes, he said. In India, they have something called the caste system. Members of different castes cannot marry or even eat together. The lowest caste is called the untouchables. But the untouchables can touch each other. Yes, then that's it exactly. The Nutters were the bottom of the pile, but we had each other. We all got invited to the prom and everything from inside our own group. But poor Scotty, with his electricity and his trigonometry, he just didn't belong to any group. It was like we were all the animals on Noah's Ark that came in pairs, except of his kind, there was only the one. It struck me how foolishly I was chattering about something that was neither here nor there. Mamma would call this rattling your teeth. I drank about half my beer without saying another word. Then I said, I could kind of see it with Scotty, but Esperanza has somebody. How could she want to leave you? It's not fair. I realized I was furious with Esperanza. I wondered if he was too, but didn't dare ask. We sat there in the shadowy living room thinking our thoughts. You could hear us swallowing beer. Then, out of the clear blue sky, he said, in Guatemala City, the police use electricity for interrogation. They have something called the telephone, which is an actual telephone of the type they use in the field. It has its own generator operated by a handle. He held up one hand and turned the other one in a circle in front of the palm. A crank, like the old-fashioned telephones? Operated with a crank, he said. The telephones are made in the United States. What do you mean they use them for interrogation? Do you mean they question you over the telephone? Esteban seemed annoyed with me. They disconnect the receiver wire and tape the two ends to your body, to sensitive parts. He just stared at me until it hit me like a truck. I felt it in my stomach muscles just the way I did when I realized that for nearly an hour I had been in the presence of Newt Hardbine's corpse. There is this horrible thing staring you in the face and you're blabbering about bowling pin lamps and 4-H. I'll get us another beer, I said. I went to the kitchen and brought back the rest of the six-pack, carrying it by the plastic rings like a purse. I popped two of them open and plumped back down on the sofa, no longer caring what I looked like. The schoolgirl nerves that had possessed me half an hour ago seemed ridiculous now. This was like having a crush on some guy only to find out he's been dating your mother or your math teacher. This man was way beyond me. I don't know exactly how to say this, I said. I thought I'd had a pretty hard life, but I keep finding out that life can be hard in ways I never knew about. I can see that it would be easier not to know, he said. That's not fair. You don't see it all. You think you're the foreigner here and I'm the American, and I just look the other way while the president or somebody sends down this and that, shiploads of telephones to torture people with. But nobody asked my permission, okay? Sometimes I feel like I'm a foreigner too. I come from a place that's so different from here, you would think you'd step right off the map into some other country where they use dirt for decoration and the national pastime is having babies. People don't look the same, talk the same, nothing. Half the time I have no idea what's going on around me here. A little shadow moved in the doorway and we both jumped. It was Turtle. You're a rascal, I said. You hop back to bed this minute. She took one hop backwards, and both Esteban and I tried not to smile. This minute, I said, in the meanest voice I could muster. She hopped backwards through the door, clapping her hands one time with each hop. We could hear her hopping and clapping all the way back through the kitchen and into bed. Snowboots jumped onto the back of the sofa and sat behind my neck, waiting for something. He made me nervous. All I'm saying is, don't be so sure until you have all the facts, Esteban said. You cannot know what Esperanza has had to live through. I was confused. He was picking up the middle of a conversation I didn't even know we'd started. No, I said, I don't. Or you either. He looked away from me and touched the corners of his eyes, and I knew he was crying in the secret way men feel they have to do. He said something I couldn't hear very well, and a name. Ismain. I shoved Snowboots gently away from the back of my neck. What? I asked. Do you remember the day we walked in the desert and you asked Esperanza why Esperanza was staring at Turtle, and I told you she looked very much like a child we knew in Guatemala? I nodded. The child was Ismain. I was afraid to understand this. I asked him if he meant that Ismain was their daughter, and Estevan said yes, that she was. She was taken in a raid on their neighborhood in which Esperanza's brother and two friends were killed. They were members of Estevan's teachers' union. He told me in what condition they had found the bodies. He wasn't crying as he told me this, and I wasn't either. It's hard to explain, but a certain kind of horror is beyond tears. Tears would be like worrying about watermarks on the furniture when the house is burning down. Ismain wasn't killed. She was taken. Try as I would, I couldn't understand this. I was no longer so stupid as to ask why they didn't call the police, but still I couldn't see why they hadn't at least tried to get her back if they knew the police had taken her and where. Don't be upset with me, I said. I know I'm ignorant. I'm sorry. Just explain it to me. But he wasn't upset. He seemed to get steadier and more patient when he explained things, as if he were teaching a class. Esperanza and I knew the names of 20 other union members, he said. The teachers' union did not have open meetings. We worked in cells and communicated by message. Most people knew only 4 other members by name. This is what I am saying. In Guatemala, you are careful. If you want to change something, you can find yourself dead. This is not what do you call the PTA? I understand. 3 members had just been killed, including Esperanza's brother, but 17 were still alive. She and I knew every one of those 17 by name. Can you understand that this made us more useful alive than dead? For us to go after Ismain is what they wanted. So they didn't kill her, they just held her? Like, I don't know what, a worm on a goddamn hook? A goddamn hook? He was looking away from me again. Sometimes after a while, these children are adopted by military or government couples who cannot have children. I felt numb, as if I had taken some drug. And you picked the lives of those 17 people over getting your daughter back, I said, or at least a chance at getting her back. What would you do, Taylor? I don't know. I hate to say it, but I really don't know. I can't even begin to think about a world where people have to make choices like that. You live in that world, he said quietly. And I knew this, but I didn't want to. I started to cry then, just tears streaming out all over and no stopping them. Estevan put his arm around me and I sobbed against his shoulder. The dam had really broken. I was embarrassed. I'm going to get snot on your clean shirt, I said. I don't know what it is. Snot? Good, I said. There was no way on earth I could explain what I felt. That my whole life had been running along on dumb luck and I hadn't even noticed.